Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever been told about Tupac Shakur's death wasn't true. Not partly wrong, not a case of police incompetence, but a full-scale illusion staged in front of the entire world. Instead of a young rap icon being gunned down in Las Vegas, maybe we were watching the opening act of one of the greatest disappearing acts in modern history. A vanishing filled with body doubles, private flights, quiet handshakes with powerful allies, and a rival mogul who thought he'd won the game, when in reality, he might have been used like a pawn. Sounds like a Hollywood script, right? But that's the story that keeps circling, louder than ever, as old testimonies, cryptic lyrics, and long-buried files bubble back into the light. And when you connect the dots, from Tupac's albums to strange medical reports, from Cuban exiles to courtroom leaks, it doesn't look like random chatter anymore. It looks like something coordinated. And standing in the middle of this storm, again, is one man, Sean Diddy Combs. For decades, Diddy embodied excess. Flashy suits, champagne showers, private jets. He was the image of hip-hop turned empire. But today, the spotlight has shifted. Instead of dancing across music videos, he's facing lawsuits, leaked testimonies, and jaw-dropping allegations. His empire is cracking, and every new case chips away at his carefully built brand. Yet woven through his troubles is a name that refuses to rest: Tupac Shakur. To understand why Tupac keeps coming back into conversation, you have to revisit the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry. To most, it was just ego, music beef, and tragic violence. But what if it wasn't only that? What if it was a chessboard? And what if Tupac, the man who renamed himself Machiavelli, wasn't just adopting a catty alias, but actually living out the philosophy of the Italian strategist who believed in deception, disappearance, and calculated power moves? Enter Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard. Unlike fans on message boards, Deal isn't speculating from the outside. He was in the cars, in the rooms, standing next to the players when things unfolded. According to Deal, Tupac didn't fall the way we've been told. He says Tupac knew a hit was coming. He knew people wanted him dead. And instead of waiting to become another cautionary headline, he prepared an escape. Think about that for a moment. Tupac was always forward-thinking. His Machiavelli album wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a blueprint. The 7-day theory, the odd line about Tupac exits, Machiavelli enters, the strange contradictions in official reports, none of it feels like coincidence anymore when you listen through this lens. Friends said Tupac stood about 5'10" and weighed around 168 pounds. The coroner's report listed a body at 6 feet tall and 215 pounds. That's not a small error. That's an entirely different build. Mistake or deliberate swap? Then there's the cremator, who supposedly handled Tupac's body. Right after the incident, he retired and disappeared. No interviews, no press, no follow-ups, just gone. That alone could spark suspicion, and for many, it did. The story deepens when you bring in Michael Nice, a former security officer. Nice claimed he was part of the team that helped smuggle Tupac out of the United States. According to him, this wasn't a sloppy scramble after a shooting. It was a full-blown operation with resources, coordination, and, here's the kicker, approval from Fidel Castro himself. Yes, Castro. Nice said Tupac wasn't only fleeing rivals, he was being sheltered by Cuban leadership, a government that had already helped members of Tupac's own family escape America. Remember, his aunt Assata Shakur was smuggled to Cuba decades earlier by the Panthers and remains there to this day. The same network could have extended that protection to her nephew. According to Nice, Tupac boarded a private jet, even serving as a co-pilot, with Panther operatives guiding the mission. First stop, Barbados. Then on to Havana. There, the rules were strict. No public appearances, no unnecessary contact, no mistakes. To the Panthers, Tupac wasn't just another musician, he was a symbol. He carried the legacy of his mother, Afeni Shakur, a respected Panther activist. Protecting him meant protecting the cause itself. And then comes the movie-like twist. Just as Michael Nice promised to release undeniable proof of Tupac's survival, he died suddenly. Some said illness, others whispered silencing. Either way, his timing raised every possible red flag. His death only made his story sound truer to those who already believed. While this escape narrative unfolded, another picture was being painted by Gene Deal. He described Diddy not as a businessman coolly running an empire, but as a man consumed with obsession. According to Deal, Diddy wasn't only threatened by Tupac's music, he was jealous of his style, his women, his charisma. Deal recalled stories of Diddy placing bets on sleeping with women Tupac had dated, not out of attraction, but out of spite. To Deal, this wasn't rivalry, it was fixation. Diddy wanted not just to outshine Tupac, but to erase him. But here's the irony. If Tupac really did fake his death, then Diddy may have built his empire believing he had won, while actually being played. Imagine thinking you've eliminated your greatest competitor, only to learn years later he slipped away, watching from the shadows. That flips the script entirely. The East Coast versus West Coast battle stops being a war and starts looking like bait. Of course, the story doesn't end in 1996. Over the years, blurry photos and shaky videos have popped up. A man in Havana with Tupac's walk, a reflection at a concert, a stranger with the same jawline and eyes. Most get written off as hoaxes, but the sightings keep coming. And with every new legal problem Diddy faces, the old question resurfaces. What if Tupac is still alive? Some say Tupac hasn't just been hiding. They claim he's been documenting everything, keeping journals, writing letters, recording secret tapes. That archive, if real, could hold names, signatures, and proof of the plot against him. Imagine Tupac stepping forward with decades of receipts. Courtrooms would explode, lawsuits would crumble, reputations would evaporate overnight. And what would Diddy fear most? Not violence, not prison. Exposure. The collapse of everything he built once the truth comes out. The idea of a state-protected exile isn't far-fetched if you study history. Assata Shakur, Tupac's aunt, escaped U.S. custody and was granted asylum in Cuba. The Panthers had networks, resources, and experience keeping their people safe. For them, protecting Tupac wouldn't just be about family, it would be about continuing the fight. To them, he wasn't only a rapper, he was a weapon, a voice that rattled systems, a mirror to America's broken promises. Keeping him alive was a mission. But here's the hardest question. If Tupac is alive, what kind of man would he be today? Not just physically older, but spiritually transformed. Silence for nearly 30 years changes a person. Exile reshapes the mind. The Tupac we knew was fiery, outspoken, quick to respond. The Tupac in hiding would be hardened, patient, more dangerous in his wisdom. Some psychologists call this ego death. When you strip away fame, visibility, and identity, you're forced to become someone new. If Tupac reemerges, he wouldn't just be the rapper we lost, he'd be something evolved. Maybe that's the point. Maybe if he comes back, it won't be to perform old hits or tour arenas. Maybe it will be to finish what he started, not just with music, but with revolution. For Diddy, that possibility is catastrophic, because if Tupac returns with evidence, Diddy's empire collapses in an instant. Awards, albums, business deals, all of it overshadowed by a single truth that his greatest rival not only survived, but outsmarted him. In that moment, history rewrites itself. Diddy stops being the victor of a bloody rivalry. He becomes a footnote in the story of the man who couldn't be killed. And that leads to the question that keeps fans awake. What happens if Tupac speaks? Not in riddles, not in coded lyrics, but directly, on camera, in court, in front of the world. That wouldn't just be a comeback, it would be a reckoning. For decades, we've mourned him, celebrated him, and built myth after myth around his absence. But if he reappeared alive, carrying truth like a weapon, it would shake not only the music industry, but the power structures that have kept certain stories hidden. It would mean the ghost we've been chasing wasn't a ghost at all. It was a man waiting for the right moment to turn silence into thunder. And that moment might be closer than anyone dares to admit.